The second set will be played on Whirlwind. Spawning in the top right-hand position, another blue Protoss from STX SoO. His name is Deer.
And here his opponent, Orange Zerg from SK Telecom T1, spawning in the bottom left position. His name is SoO.
Indeed it is.
Since the map is Whirlwind, we are most likely going to see a macro game between the two players. One player might try to cheese, especially the Protoss player, but the distance is so long, so far away between the two players.
It is. I mean, you could potentially see some type of cheesy 2-base from the Protoss. It's really hard to pull off on a map as big as this. Same can be said from the Zerg side. Nidus Swarms kind of could work, maybe, but nowadays, when Protoss, they almost always open Stargate, and generally that style of play just doesn't work.
Yeah, especially if SoO decides to go for some kind of cheesy play, I can only see either a really fast pull or a Nidus Swarm working on this map.
Yeah, and we're clearly not going to see an early pull from him. He's already up to 14 supplies, 15. I have a feeling he's going to go for that hatch first. He's sending his drone out there. Now, something I've noticed recently in the metagame development, Zerg players are going for the hatch first a lot more against Protoss.
Now, Deer is one of those Protoss players who did really well in beginning of Heart of the Swarm, especially against Zerg players. Remember when he started building Tempest out of the Stargate and then started adding a lot of Void Rays, especially on ladder and some televised matches? He's one of those guys who pioneered the Sky Toss style early in Pro League.
Yeah, indeed he did. Alright, well, we do have the Nexus first here from Deer. SoO going for that early gas after going for the hatchery first. He's going to grab his pool after that as well, of course. And Forge going down from Deer. He's just going to play it safe and solid, and he'll have no issues getting down his cannon in time.
Yeah, and I like how the Protoss players, they could switch back between the Gateway Expand and the Nexus first in this particular matchup. And on this map, with the Zerg player not being able to scout what their opponent is doing, Zerg players are kind of forced to get the gas out, even if they don't want to. And what this allows the Zerg players to do is that if they see the Gateway Expand, then they can try to get the link speed and then try to make a little more Zerglings and trying to punish their opponent for going that style. But today, Deer is just opening up standard with the Nexus first and then the Forge Gateway Cannon.
Deer only deciding to scout now, but on a large map like this, players either they don't scout or they have pretty delayed scouts. They generally try to not do it early on, and the builds kind of lean towards more of a macro side of things. The earlier expansions go up, faster third bases will go up as well. We've even seen a fast forward rate in the Stargate style on this map that's worked before in the past. Yeah,
all Deer wants to do right now is just know where their opponent is. That's all he needs to do at this point, actually, because he's just going to try to macro as heavily as possible, get a Stargate out, and play a standard Protoss play. Now, I don't think the probe has been scouted by the Zergling as SoO just scouts in the left top corner, but both players are going to eventually scout that their opponent is cross-positioned on this map.
We don't see a third base yet from SoO here. That's something interesting to point out. It's already almost 5 minutes into the game. The Zergling does scout the position of the Protoss player as well. Now, this probe's probably going to be a little bit confused. Hey, man, where is your additional hatchery? What are you doing, man?
Deer doesn't know how SoO exactly opened up, and SoO, he can still get a third hatchery up at this point, because we've seen some Zerg players try to go for the gas first and then the spawning pool, and they delay the third a little bit just to make sure that the Protoss player is not going to harass early in the game. In fact, as soon as SoO scouted that there is a Forge and the Gateway at the natural, he droned up. He got 10 drones out immediately.
Yeah, I have noticed that. Sometimes the Zerg players, they'll delay that third a little bit. SoO going to go ahead and grab that hatchery now, though. And we have Deer. I think he may try to move across the map with a few units here. He's got his Mothership Core out, and he's building a Stalker right now. Generally, you only build Stalkers if you want to be aggressive early on in the game.
Yeah, and this is going to be the one Stalker, one Solid 2 Stalker and a Mothership Core. And all he's trying to do is try to harass his opponent a little bit, recall out if he's out of position.
I love this. Early third expansion from Deer here. Pretty much almost at the same time as his opponents, a little bit behind. SoO making 6 lings behind this. An early expansion like this generally leads to the Sky Toss style, but you can still, go into the Robotech. You can still go for some type of Twilight timing as well. We do have the +1 on the way.
The key point for this style is to get the cannons up as early as possible in the third base. You have especially around the Nexus. You have so many Zerglings trying to deny the third base as long as possible. What you have to do is make sure that there's a little less room for the Zerglings to cover the Nexus. And I mean, looking at the walls right now, SoO, he has to decide. Do I get a lot of Zerglings out and deny it, or do I just macro up heavily behind this and get a faster fourth base?
That is going to be the question here. We don't see any unit commitment yet from SoO. His lair is halfway done right now. Yeah, he's building a lot more drones right now. So it looks like he realizes my opponent made a fast third, but I can't really punish that.
The cannons, the gateways are already there, so the Zerglings, at the very best, I might cancel the Nexus, but I'm going to lose a lot of Zerglings, and my opponent can go for a counterattack.
Ooh, that's a lot of gateways on the way up to 6 in production. The +1's going to finish pretty soon here as well.
I don't see any more probes being... Okay, now 3 additional probes are being made, but this is going to allow Deer to go for a nice timing, nice pressure build against his opponent.
Another thing to point out here, all of those gateways are at the natural, so if any Overlord goes to the main base of Deer, it isn't going to see anything.
Look at this. Rochewar and Hydra only starting just right now. All SoO can depend on is Zerglings to defend against this attack, and that's a lot of sentries in the main army. +1 is also going to finish just as the push is going to happen.
All right, SoO's got to realize that there's something going on right now.
He saw the pylon.
Yeah, he saw the pylon. That's a pretty big tell. Yeah, and seeing those units here, SoO's going to have to crank out a lot of units. Oh, these Zerglings are going to get a good surround on some of the units over here. Can the Zealots clean up the Zerglings? No, it looks like there's just a few too many units from SoO here, but the problem is the sentry count is still pretty high right now. The Roachwarren about to complete 9 Hydralisks on the way here. He needs to wait for reinforcements. SoO could end up losing this third base because there's a huge amount of gateway reinforcements that can come behind this attack. Nice force fields.
Trapping every single one of the drones that was at the third base. SoO just trying to make the best out of the situation, but he just did not see this coming. Yes, the Hydras are out, but the damage is already being done.
This is looking extremely bad for SoO now because he's lost his third base. His opponent is on 3 bases and can continue the probe up or go for other tech behind this, and he's got a pretty large army right now. The supply is 110 to 82. There's really next to no defense here from SoO except for a handful of Hydras.
And remember, there's a lot of force fields still left on the sentries. Deer, if he's caught out of position, he can go for the recall. He can still use a Time Warp, 2 of them.
Nice force fields going down there, and hold positions on the Zealots there. I'm not sure if he's doing that on purpose or not.
I'm sure he's doing it on purpose now, as he knows that he's won this game completely. SoO, after seeing an early third, he cut the tech to try to get the fourth base up as early as possible, and this is actually costing him the game.
Nice force fields,
Deer is just storming in with tons of units.
That was a really cool build from Deer there, I have to say.
SoO, he's not experienced with this build, I have to say. The normal response is get an early fourth base up while delaying the tech a little bit, and Deer exactly knew what SoO was going to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually such a cool build because it's the metagame right now is you go for the Stargates and you play very passive early on, especially if you get that early third base. But that's the opposite of what Deer did.
Also think about this, because SoO went for the early fourth base, he doesn't have any units to defend against the timing push.
Exactly. The score now tied up 1-1. The next match is going to be Mini versus Brown, a PvP on Naro Station. Don't go anywhere. We will be back after this commercial break.